Hi, this is Bruce Buffer, your voice of the Octagon, and you're listening to MMA Mental.
Welcome to this week's MMA Mental podcast. My name is Ray. As and from this week, we're part of the new MMA Victor Radio network, which we're very excited about. As always, I want to shout out our sponsors, UK Fightwear. There's a few of the shows that will be part of the network as well. We'll have the MMA Podcast, the MMA Round Table, and Word on the Street will all be coming together as one big family, which is fantastic news. Okay, let's get on to this week's interviews. We've had a really good lineup. Obviously, I was in Stockholm last week, so I managed to get a few of the guys that I met in Stockholm to come onto the show. So we opened the show with Brad One Punch Pickett. Spoke to him a couple of days after his Fight of the Night performance and win over Mike Easton. Then our second guest is Tom Kong Watson. We had him on quite a while ago, so it's nice to get him back on. Of course, his last fight was in February, and he won. He beat Stanislav Nedkov, but he also won 2 bonuses in that fight. And then we move across to women's MMA, starting with the 2 ladies that will be co headlining at XFC 23. We've got Brianna van Buren and Stephanie Eggink, so that'll be that's going to be a great fight. So it was nice getting both of them on the show. And then our final guest is the first British female to fight in the UFC, which is Rosi Sexton. She's due to fight at UFC 161 against Alexis Davis. We did have a couple of other interviews last week that also booked that fell through, so I will try and get them reorganised, but hopefully you'll enjoy these interviews. Okay, I'm now joined by UFC UK Bantamweight, top Bantamweight, Brad One Punch Pickett, fresh off of his Fight of the Night performance and victory over Mike Easton. Thank you for joining us today, Brad.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So it was a fantastic fight of the weekend. How are you feeling?
I feel good. You know, obviously, I don't have any serious injuries. Maybe just a little bit of bumps and bruises and stuff like that. That won't heal like within the week. Basically, I'll be training at the end of this week. So that's all good. I was happy to come away with a win. I watched my fight back a few times now. A little bit, disappointed with myself at times. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to moan too much, but I'm glad that I came away with a win. But I felt that I made the fight a lot closer than it needed to be, and I believe that I can fight better than that. But at the end of the day, I'm still really glad that I came away with the win. Against a tough opponent.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a fantastic fight, and credit to Mike, he really made it difficult for you. When it went to the judges, how confident were you in the decision?
Well, I was a lot more confident on the night. When I was fighting, I thought I won all 3 rounds, but I knew they were close. I knew 100% won the 3rd round the most clearest. Yeah, the other 2 rounds I knew they were close, but I believe I won. When I watched the fight back, I see how close they actually were, and I still feel that I won those rounds, but man, they were close. The first 2 rounds were close, but I still believe I won the rounds. But I can see how he may have an argument himself, thinking he won, or the same sort of thing with me and Eddie Wyland, where when I fought Eddie Wyland, I knew I lost the first round, but I thought I just pinched and just won the last 2. But then as I see it on the whole, he won the first round more clearly, so he won the whole fight. I think the same with me and Mike Easton. I finished the fight a lot more stronger, so I believe I won the whole fight, and also I finished every round stronger than he did.
Now, obviously, in true Brad Pickett style, you picked up another bonus. What was it like to get the Fight of the Night bonus?
It was brilliant. I'm not doing the sport just for fun. Obviously, it's my job, so when you do pick up these bonuses, it does help a considerable amount. And also, me being later on in my career, obviously I'm not going to be doing this for a long, long time. It's took me a long time to get to where I am now. I've done it I've done things the hard way. I've fought up through the ranks rather than some people get in a fast track from TV and stuff like that. So I've had a lot of fights before I actually got to the show and stuff. So now I'm earning good money, but I'm also now 34, so I'm not going to be doing this for the rest of my life. So now I need to try and look after money and look for the future.
So you talked there a little bit about the future. How long do you see yourself fighting for, Brad?
Age is just a number, really. You know, age won't. My age won't retire me. My body will. So it's when my body decides that he's had enough. Because fighting is actually the easy part. It's the 12 weeks training before the fight. You know, it's quite tough on your body, especially at a later age. You know, your body don't recover as fast in between training sessions, and if you pick up injuries, you don't heal as quick and stuff like that. So if I just keep myself injury free, I'll keep going. You know, but I think it'll be a case of an injury will retire me, not my performances.
Yeah, and you say there about beyond fighting. Have you thought what you'd like to do beyond fighting?
A few things. Well, I definitely would like to stay within the sport because sport's a massive part of my life. So obviously the natural progression is to go into coaching, and I'd love to be a full-time, maybe open my own gym and stuff like that. You know. Yeah,
I mean obviously. When you've got young guys coming through, who best to be taught by somebody who's been there and done it rather than somebody who's just talking about doing it. So you're a prime example of that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's. You talk about taking the long way. Let's talk a little bit about your career. I mean, you like you say, you started a long time ago. You started in 2004. And you fought. You obviously were big on the UK scene. You fought in cage rage. What were some of your own personal highlights from fighting on the UK scene before you went international?
Obviously winning the British belt in front of my parents. I won the cage rage British champion, and that was brilliant for me. For me, ever when I've been doing the sport, it's never been. I never thought about being where I am now. I kind of always had small, achievable goals all my life. Where I never first started and go, right, I'm going to be the ranked top 5 in the world. It's like I started and I was like, hopefully I'll have a fight one day and then win, and then I'll win that one. Then it'd be like I want to win the next couple, I want to get better, and then now I want to be the best guy in UK now. And that's something like small steps rather than looking at a massive thing ahead of me, and like I want to be up there when I know there's a lot to work on. So it was nice, and I mean, I grew a lot with the sport as well. When I had my first fight, I went straight to pro, and I'd only been doing the sport like 6 months, and I didn't know nothing. It's quite strange.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about growing with the sport, and I mean, at the time that you obviously started on the UK scene, it's fair to say that MMA was not that established, certainly not as established as it is now. Could you ever imagine it being, as lucrative as what it's turned out to be for you now? Because obviously you put a lot of hard work in, and everything you've got, you've earned, like you say, the hard way. Did you imagine that it could be this successful as what it has been?
Yes and no. I thought it would definitely be. I didn't think it'd be as quick as this. No, I still think it's hasn't grown to its full potential even now. It's gonna, I knew it'll be, in my eyes, number one combat sport there is. For me, it's just happened a lot quicker than I expected. It's definitely in my eyes, it's outgrown boxing already. Maybe not in this country, but worldwide, I think it has. And I never did think that would happen in my short career, or even beyond that. I thought it would take a long time. So this sport's been growing rapidly, and every year it keeps getting bigger.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like you said, it has. It still needs more exposure in the UK, and we are getting there. But I mean, the exposure it gets in the US is huge, and there's so many characters within MMA, especially with what the UFC does. But even outside the UFC, but within the UFC compared to boxing, there's so many young guys coming through so many weight classes as well. You obviously, I think one of your biggest breaking points was obviously getting picked up by WEC in 2009. At the time, WEC was a sister company owned by Zuffa and kind of under the same banner as the UFC. How did that come about that you got picked up by WEC?
It was basically, for me, to get to the WC was a big thing. I think a lot of it was to do, obviously, one of my training and best friends, Mike Brown, was the WC champion at the time. And I was training him a long time. So I cornered him for each fight, and I used to go to the shows and stuff. And he'd always speak to the matchmaker there, it was Sean Shelby, and he would be champion. And like, Brianna would always put good in words for me and all that sort of stuff. But back in those days, it was really hard for them to get an English fighter because of visa. They had to obviously buy a visa because they only had shows in America. They didn't have shows around Europe and stuff like that. You know, when you use now, if they've got an English guy, they don't have to get a visa. They can give them a few fights in the UK first and then see how he goes. And I'll go out and speak to America, then get them a visa. For me, they had to buy me a visa straight away, and back in those days, it was actually quite expensive. So for them to buy me a visa showed a lot of interest in me because it was much easier for them to properly sign an American fighter and get them to fight, you know, than pay a lot of money to get a European fighter like myself. So for me, when they did that, it showed, you know, it gave me a lot of encouragement that they were really interested in me, and I went to the WC, and it was brilliant. You know, I loved my time in the WC. Like, it was the best place in the world for my weight class, you know, and it was the UFC for my weight class, you know. So it was a dream come true back in the day.
It absolutely was. You're right in what you say. I mean, at that time, the UFC, it seems mad to say this now, but at that time the UFC did not have featherweight and bantamweight. Of course, those two divisions now have exploded. But one of your biggest moments within WC, and you had more than one, but obviously one that's going to jump out now, especially to a lot of people with the way things have unfolded. But you fought the current UFC flyweight champion. Of course, he's not champion. He wasn't champion at the time. Demetrius Johnson, and not only did you beat him, but you actually out wrestled him, which of course is something that the British fighters get criticised for. What was that fight like?
To me, yeah, when I fought him, he was unbeaten at the time, and he was I think it was like 12-0 or something, and he was making fight in the WC. And he was a bit of an unknown entity, you know. Everyone was going on. He was Matt Hume's prodigy student and all that sort of stuff. And I fought him, and he was tough. For me, it was a really good fight. I really got to showcase all my skills again there, and I really out-wrestled him. I think I took him down 10 times in that fight, you know, and out-wrestled him the whole way through. And yeah, I really enjoyed the fight. And then I knew he was good, and I knew that he would get, you know, more. I didn't get as much credit for that fight as I would do if I beat him now, obviously. So, but he's a great athlete, and I was happy, and it's a great win for me on my record, you know.
Now, also, I mean, shortly after that, of course, well, I say shortly, within about a year, obviously, we got the news that UFC and WEC were going to merge, which I think a lot of the fans were all waiting for and hoping was going to happen. How did you hear about it, and how did it make you feel knowing that you were going to make the step up from WEC to UFC?
For me, it was actually, for the fans, it sucked, because I know the fans really loved watching the WEC fight as WEC fans, you know, they loved it. But for us as fighters, it's so much better for us, because it's much more exposure for us. We're fighting in front of bigger audiences, and we get better sponsorships, better TV, sort of stuff like that, and better exposure. So it was always better for us as fighters. The fans really loved the WC because there's all the small weight classes, and you know, and a lot of people like those fights. Now they're mixed in with UFC, which I say it worked really well for us as fighters. They didn't work so well for the actual hardcore WC fans, you know. But they got the chance for people who wasn't really MMA fans, they were UFC fans.
Yeah.
Gave them a chance for us to see the small guys and show them that our skills and stuff like that, you know.
I also think it was good for the UK as well, because obviously in the UK, UFC is pretty much the only American promotion we get live and we get access to, where with WEC, we knew you were fighting in WEC and we could check your results, but it was always hard to find and watch the fights. So it was nice for us to be able to see, you know, as a UK UFC fan, it was nice to be able to see another UK fighter making his way in the UFC. So I think it was better for the UK fans as well.
Yeah, definitely. As in, that's a big thing. As in, I love fighting in the WC, but a lot of people in England didn't even know what the WC was and didn't know where they could see it or anything like that. So a lot of people, me from, I remember when I come back in England, I'd be fighting and I'd be going to show them like all my times. The people were there, be going, "Oh, so when are you going to fight here again? I haven't seen you fight for ages." And I'd be like, "Well, I haven't fighted. I've been fighting in America." "Oh, really?" "Oh, I don't know." So not a lot of people got to know about the WC, you know.
Yeah, it's a shame.
I mean, now everyone knows about the UFC, yeah, and it's brilliant. So obviously, my popularity has grown a lot more in the UK with the help of the UFC.
Yeah, it's a shame because, like you say, with WBC, they put on some amazing events, but it wasn't seen by enough people, and it's a shame. But at least you're getting the exposure that you deserve now. Not just you know, the weight classes and the other fighters in the weight class, because there's some amazing talent in those two divisions, and of course the flyweight division as well. Now you're currently 3-2 in the UFC. Now I've been lucky enough. I'm just looking at your resume here. Out of the 5 fights, I've been lucky enough to be at 4 of them live. So what are your own personal highlights from your, you know, what's been an epic 5 fights so far for you in the UFC?
I think my highlight in the UFC would probably be my fight with Buren in the UK, because obviously having a name like One Punch, you have to live up to it once in a while. So doing that, and also doing it on British soil after like my other British fight, my UFC debut against Henan Barral, didn't obviously go to plan. So for me to get a win on British soil and in spectacular fashion, you know, it was a dream, you know. So that definitely was my UFC highlight today.
I think what added to that as well was the fact that Yves Chabrine is such a dangerous striker, because that's what, you know, we all know that's what his strength is. And that punch that you landed, it was picture perfect. And like you say, it was true Brad One Punch Pickett, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like, it's nice to live up to your name for once, you know.
I want to ask you as well about your intro. I mean, one of the things that stands out about you, not just in your fights, but obviously I've met you in person as well, is you're very, very charismatic, and we get that in your intro. What's inspired your intro with your walkout, the stuff you wear, and the music?
Obviously, when I first started moving the sport, so I'm not just a pretty face. I know you have to be marketable as well, you know, just to make yourself different, to stand out from everyone else. You know, I know it's just the fighting style with characters and stuff like that. But my actual, my kind of re-entrance come from was like, I'm from the East End of London, and I wanted to keep something close to what meant to me. As in, like, I know a lot of people come out to gangster music and like, and I'm thinking to myself, how many people out there are actually gangsters? There's not that many guys, you know. And so I wanted something to represent me and where I'm from. So Chas and Dave are family friends of mine, and so I thought I'd come out to Chas and Dave up to East End of London. It represented, you know, where I'm from, so it was pretty cool. And then also with my trilby hat and my braces, I wear those because my mom's dad, my granddad, used to be a bare-knuckle boxer, and he actually died when I was quite young. But yeah, I got to hear stories about him, and I saw pictures of him and stuff like that. And he used to always wear braces and a trilby hat, so it was like a tribute to him when I got into fighting. I thought, you know, I'll wear my trilby hat and some braces, and you know, I'll come out to Chas and Dave, and you know, and then it just like grew from there, and I've been doing it ever since.
It's brilliant. It just adds to the whole. Because it's not just always about the fight, is it? It's about the build up, and we've seen that with a lot of people, and it just adds to the whole thing. It is, especially when you're there in the crowd. I mean, it just gets the crowd so pumped up for the fight. Now, before I move on, I want to obviously talk about what's going to happen with you next. There was also at this event just gone. There was also another big debut from another, not British but obviously Irish fighter who, you know, looks like he's going to make waves. He was another very charismatic. What were your thoughts on Conor McGregor?
I was very impressed. He fought actually a teammate of mine called Michael Britsh. He chose me and Matt to talk to him. And I know how good he is. He's tough. He's a very tough opponent. And Conor McGregor, you know, dealt with him very, very well. He actually, like he said, where I think he was way too emotionally attached to the fight. I think Conor McGregor got his head quite a bit, and Marcus got way too more emotional. And Conor McGregor was very calm, but very, very seasoned and relaxed in there, and showed some great striking skills. And I'm as a fan of the sport as well, I'm very intrigued and looking forward to see what this kid's got to offer.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about Marcus Brimage. Marcus Brimage, I met him at the weekend as well, and he's such a nice guy. I've listened to some of his interviews, but his performances in the octagon, especially his last fight against Jimmy Hettis, who's very, very tough. Marcus Brimage is a top fighter. So to beat him the way he beat them, that's what impressed me. Not the fact he beat Marcus Brimage, it's the way he beat him, because Marcus Brimage is a very, very good fighter.
Yeah. I mean, Marcus Brimage, I always laughing at him because he always gets given these tough fights. Like his last 2 fights, he was fighting unbeaten guys, 10-0 and 10-0 or something, and he beat both of those guys. And then I go Conor McGregor, I was like, man, they keep giving you some tests, but like I say, Conor McGregor, I mean, I thought were really good, and if anything, I felt a little bit cute. I didn't get to see enough of him. I wanted to see a bit more, see what his wrestling was like, see what his ground's like, and stuff like that. You obviously can see that he's got very good striking.
Yeah, hopefully we'll obviously get to see more of him in the future. Okay, so you've come off another big win, and another performance which we know has impressed Dana White in the UFC, which is always good. So what happens next? Have you got your eye on anyone else you'd like to fight?
Basically, I like to fight. I want to keep myself busy, so. But I know there's a lot of. I've already fought like 5 out of 10 people, 5 people out inside the top 10 already, So there are others out there I can fight. I think a few of them already got matched up and stuff like that. So I may have to wait to see how some fights go. Fights that maybe appeal to me would be like Uriah Faber's fighting Scott Jorgensen, so maybe to win it out of them too. I know Brian Bowles is fighting soon. He's fighting George Roop. So Brian Bowles fans won't mind fighting Brian Bowles. But these guys already got fights. I think there's one person out there who doesn't have a fight. I think might make it for an interesting fight would be Michael McDonald. But I think how the UFC works is normally match winners with winners and losers with losers. So I don't think they're matching up with Michael McDonald. So also another one out there, I was thinking maybe someone like Mizugaki. He's been a long time. I think me and him would be an exciting fight. He's just won his last 2 fights. So that could be something that makes sense as well. So there's a few fight options out there for me, but I just like to get back in there as soon as I can, really. And
I know you obviously took some bumps and bruises, but as far as you're feeling, there's no other injuries from the fight, just a few cuts, obviously on your face.
I got a little cut on my nose, and it's not even that bad. I can cut worse in training, so it's fine. I'm ready to go again. I can fight in a week. I can fight next weekend, body wise.
Yeah. Well, I want to say, Brad, it's been a real honour to get a chance to speak to you, especially so close to such a big victory. So obviously, 1, thank you for coming on today, and 2, before we let you go, if you want to do any shout-outs, friends, family, sponsors, and also let people know about your Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah, sure, definitely. Actually, the people obviously would like to follow me. So go to @1, as in the word 1, _punch. That'd be awesome. And also, I'd just like to thank my sponsors. More of my sponsors I have been long-term relationship sponsors, which have been awesome for me. Monkey Nutrition, they helped me out so much, stuck by me. Venom, Fightwear, I've been with them for a long time now. Alien Wear, I'm a massive gamer, so they look after me. They're good. And Spike, and also a company called G-Form, which is a new company. They've been looking after me for a little bit, and they're going to be hitting the MMA scene pretty soon. So I'd like to thank all those guys because they help me out so much.
Well, I just want to,
and also my training partners that I can talk to in the Team Time.
Just want to say, Brad, a big thank you for today. So really appreciate you coming on.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me.
Okay, we're now joined by top UFC and UK middleweight Tom Kong Watson. Thanks for joining us today, Tom.
No problem, anytime.
Right, let's talk about your last fight. Of course, you're about 5 or 6 weeks out of the fight now. You had a fight of the night and a knockout of the night win over Stanislav Nedkov. How did you feel going into the fight?
Well, I feel really good to get the 2 bonuses you mentioned, and just really to put on a good fight for the UFC fans. Obviously a lot of people in England have seen me being exciting fights over the years, and it was good to put on an exciting fight for the US fans as well. So.
Well, I know from being at the event and being in the press conference afterwards, Dana White wasn't overly pleased with the card in general, but I know he was really, really pleased with you and your performance. What was it like to get that kind of positive response from Dana White?
Well, I mean, Dana's in charge of the organisation, so it's good for me. But like I say, really, most of it comes down to the fans. If the fans are happy, then the people at the UFC are going to be happy. So on that night, they had a lot of decisions, which is unusual in the UFC. I think that card was the most decisions in UFC history, I think. So it is what it is.
Yeah, you're right. It is unusual, but you never know how a fight's going to go. And obviously, your fight was just back and forth. I mean, he had you in trouble. You obviously reversed him, and of course, then once you started pouring it on, he just couldn't keep up with the tempo that you were setting.
Yeah, and just that's how a lot of my fights are. I mean, even before the UFC, I think most of my BAMMA performances would have been, fight of the night. Had they did those bonuses at MFC. I had knockout of the year, and before that in Cage Rage, I obviously had a lot of good fights as well. So, I think it's something that I've tried to do throughout my career, and something that I'll continue to do. Yeah,
I absolutely agree. Now, you're currently 1-1 in the UFC, and obviously you made your debut against Brad Tavares. How much pressure was there on you going into that fight? Because obviously you were so well known as being one of the top fighters outside the UFC. Was there any added pressure on you going in for your UFC debut?
No, not really. I mean, with the UFC, everybody talks about you coming, you got all this pressure, but to me it was just another fight, and I still think really that was fight of the night on that card. We had a good fight. I just think that fight, I tried to put on too much of an exciting fight and just come forward and brawl it out, and that cost me the victory. But I'm not. It's not something that I'm disappointed with. You're only as good as your last fight, and then I'll fight again soon, and that'll be the fight that I'll be judged on. So.
Yeah, that's fair comment. Now, we had you on the show quite a while ago, but we talked about it a little bit in Sweden. I spoke to you in the build up to your Jack Marshman fight. And one of the things that you said to me in that interview, and I'll always remember it, was you said that you won't feel like you're in the UFC properly until you're fighting on a main card. Do you feel after your last performance, which obviously was an excellent performance, that your next fight should be on a UFC main card?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it as well is, I think the UFC is where it's branched out so much. I mean, I still believe that there's a lot of the US fans didn't see my last fight. It was on Facebook. If you didn't tune into Facebook, you won't have seen it. So, being on the main card for me gives me the chance to let most of the people see it. So, I would like to fight on the main card, and I think really, for me, I'd like to fight in the States or somewhere outside of Europe. But I don't think the UFC is coming back to the UK until October. So, it'd be great if I could, cross all those sort of checkpoints really for me in the next fight.
Well, hopefully that, like you say, you're obviously not going to be waiting until October for your next fight. Do you any ideas of when you'd like to get back into the octagon?
Well, I'm looking at around July, something like that. After the last fight I had, the doctor, raised an issue with my elbow from the fight, so I had to get MRIs and X-rays. So I'm going to go back to the doctor in the States in May, but they've pretty much said that I'll be cleared by the end of May. So as soon as I get cleared, then the UFC can match me a fight. So
Have you haven't got your eye on a particular card?
No, I mean, there's the July card that is a pretty big card in Vegas, but I mean, it's already filling up pretty big. Just a few people I know fighting on that. Cub Swanson's going to be fighting Dennis Silva on that. Obviously, at my weight, you've got Anderson Silva, Weidman, and then Munoz and Timbo. So, I think that'd be... Yeah, and then, just so that sort of card really is a big card in Vegas. But, there's a UFC card every couple of weeks, so I don't really think it makes a difference where. I'd like to fight in the States, and, I think there's a card in August even in Boston, so, we'll see what the UFC will do.
Cool. And now, obviously, you've been quite vocal as well about some of the people you'd like to face next. So, who have you got your eye on, and who do you think would be a good matchup for you?
Well, I mean, I'd like to fight someone that, it sounds cliche really, because everybody goes on that British fighters want to just stand up and and throw down. But really, I always like those fights that are exciting. I'll fight whoever. It doesn't bother me. But I did ask to fight Vanderlei because I think that would be similar to his last fight with Brian Stan, just with a different ending. And I think Vitor would be a good opponent. But realistically speaking, I think it's going to be someone further down the middleweight division. So I think in the next month it'll depend on how a lot of middleweight fights go, and it'll probably be a winner of one of those fights that I'll end up fighting.
Yeah, they normally like to match the winners with the winners, don't they? Which I think that's something you said to me as well in Sweden. It's funny you should mention Vitor Bavl there, because I know you've also been in the past been quite vocal on TRT. So what are your views on the fact that he obviously was using TRT in his fight with Michael Bisping?
Well, I mean, the thing is, I personally think they're just being very clever. They can, the commission allow it if a doctor, grants you a TRT exemption. But listen, I train in the States, and I know the system, how they're working it, and I just don't think it's that hard to do. And I believe in hard work, not excuses. And I think a lot of these guys are just finding an easier way to do what they do. I don't really have any sympathy for Bisping. He's not someone that I'm friends with, but if you look at his losses in the UFC, they're all to guys that are taking testosterone, with the exception of Richard. So it is frustrating from my point of view, and I'm sure from many of the fans.
Yeah, like you say, it's an unfair advantage when there's people like yourself who are putting the work in and not using anything like that. It's an unfair advantage for the people that are using it. Now, I know, like I already said, we talked briefly in Sweden. You were at the Q&A in Sweden as well. What were your views on the card, and what were some of your personal standouts, or who personally stood out to you on the night?
I thought it was a great card. I mean, I think the last UFC I went to watch was the one in Birmingham where Munoz fought Lieben. And I think it was just a good card. They obviously had the problems with Gustafsson wasn't able to go, but the main event, even that shocked me a little bit. I expected Masasi to win inside the distance. So although he was dominant, I thought that delivered more to me than I expected, and I was just really really impressed with Brad Pickett. I've watched him a lot over the years, and I just think the level he's at UK. I think he's the best fighter in England by quite a long way, in my opinion. Just how well-rounded he is in his wrestling, in his grappling, his striking, everything. I don't think he gets as much credit. I was pretty impressed with Ross Pearson, also in a different way, in that I thought he looks pretty slow. I was thinking I thought he would beat Couture pretty easily, and then I was watching the fight unfold, and I thought, well, he's not really doing a lot here, but then he showed, what a world-class fighter does, and just, he saw an opening and just finished it within a matter of seconds. So, I was pretty impressed with the way he could change the pace too.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say as well, it's fair to note that obviously Ross Pearson had a pretty nasty injury on the night, didn't he, before he went out, and obviously that probably affected his performance a little bit in the first round. Yeah,
I spoke to him at the airport after the fight when he was flying back to, I think he was going to Sunderland, and I asked him if his foot, affected his movement, because where I was obviously cage side, I thought, he looked a little bit more flat-footed than normal, and he said, it did affect it, but in a way, I think, that helped him, because, like he said, he didn't chase him around, and then when the opening was there, then he steps on it. But I mean, to go in there with that sort of injury, shows the level he's at.
Yeah, I agree. There's another one I want to ask you on as well. Did you get to see Conor McGregor's performance?
Yeah, I saw his fight. Yeah, I was pretty. I hadn't seen any of Conor McGregor's fights, so there's a lot of hype, a lot of people sort of talking about him, but I haven't actually had the chance to see any of his fights. So I was, got to say myself, was pretty impressed with his performance, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a big fight in his next fight in the UFC. I think it wouldn't surprise me if he goes pretty quickly up that division.
Yeah, they're talking about him being on the card in Boston, which is obviously a card you mentioned as well. But yeah, there was some really great performance. There was some great performance from some of the Swedish fighters as well, obviously in front of their home crowds. I mean, Razor looked very good, and Akira Korosani looked very good as well. It was a really solid card, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think Akira, really wasn't tipped to win that fight either. So I thought he showed a lot of improvement since he's been out in New York. And as you mentioned, I just think in general it was a great card. And that for me, another fight that I've just remembered was the Reza Madadi Michael Johnson fight was an absolute classic as well.
Yeah, I think that for me that was a contender for fight of the night up until the Brad Pickett Mike Easton fight. But it was a brilliant card. It was a great event to be at. The atmosphere was great as well. Now I know you're I believe you're flying back out to the US soon. So what are your plans in the US?
Well, I've just been training out in California. I mean, I trained out there, for my last fight. So I went to Sweden from there. So I'll just get back out there and start training and working on all parts of my game until I know my next opponent, and then I can start focusing on them.
Brilliant. Well, I really appreciate your time today. It was a real pleasure getting the opportunity to meet you in person at the weekend, and obviously having you back on the show again today was brilliant as well. So, but before I let you go, Tom, I just want to give you a chance to do any shout outs. Want to shout out any friends, family, sponsors, and let people know about Facebook and Twitter as well?
I mean, the easiest way is, I'm on Twitter quite a lot. I usually try and reply to most of the tweets to me. So I'm on there at Tom Con Watson, and just that on my Facebook page, which is exactly the same, Tom Con Watson. So I've got video blogs. One was just released, and they'll be coming out every 2 weeks. So if people want to follow me up to the next fight, they can check them out.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Tom, and I'm certainly looking forward to seeing who you face next and seeing you get another victory in the octagon.
All right, no worries. Thanks a lot.
Okay, we're now joined by Brianna van Buren. Brianna will be fighting at XFC 23 in the co-main event against Stephanie Eggink. Thank you for joining me today, Brianna.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So, I know you've got a big fight coming up soon, and you're obviously going to be co-main event. How's preparation going for the fight?
The preparation up to this fight has been good. Training has been well. Everything has been well. Weight's on point. Everything's good. I'm excited.
Now, I know you've taken this fight obviously on short notice. How much notice did you have to prepare for the fight?
Say it again?
Sorry, you've taken your replacement. You've taken the fight on relatively short notice. How much notice did you have for the fight?
Finding out that I was going to fight Stephanie, I believe I was 4 weeks out, gave me a month of preparation. That's pretty much it. 4 weeks out.
So do you want to talk me through the process? So obviously you get contacted and you get offered this big opportunity. What was your thought process when you were made the offer?
When they offered me the fight, I was stoked. I was really, really excited. I'm still excited. I mean, I'm very honored to be fighting for such a big promotion like XFC, and especially the fighters on there. I'm really excited about it. It means a lot to me.
How does it feel as well? Does it add any extra pressure knowing that your fight is going to be on national television?
How do I feel?
Yeah, how does it feel knowing that, and does it add any extra pressure for you?
Feels good. I mean, it's truly a blessing. I mean, me being televised and like I said, thousands of people around the world are going to be watching, and it feels good. I'm very honored to take this opportunity.
So I know you said you found out about 4 weeks, to give you about 4 weeks preparation. Who have you been training with in preparation for this fight?
Who have I been training with? You said?
Yeah. Who? What camp do you train with? Who are the people that you're training with?
I train at WMMMA Training Center, which is located in Joe Lake, California. I also have a few training buddies up in San Jose. Yeah, I train at WMMMA. My training partners for this fight have been usually the training partners at Ant Dogs MMA, along with Anthony Figueroa, who is my main coach.
Now, I know, obviously, am I right in saying this is going to be your second pro bout? Is that correct?
This is going to be my second pro, yeah.
So what? I know you had one fight, and obviously you won your fight by knockout, so you're 1-0. What made you want to get into mixed martial arts?
Well, I like competing. I say I'm very competitive. I like to compete, and I'd have to say my uncles. They're very inspirational to me, and seeing them do it, and I fell in love with training, and it's kind of like a love-hate relationship with my training and stuff like that. So I have a passion for it, and my uncle's the one, Anthony Figueroa, is the one who got me into training.
Did you have any background in any other type of martial art before you started training mixed martial arts?
Before I started training in mixed martial arts, I played soccer. I played soccer, and then I did some cross country. I tried to stay busy as a youngster. I'd say I did soccer my freshman year, and then I did some track and some running. That's pretty much it. And then I did some boxing and some fitness, some kickboxing, and then I started doing some tournaments and so forth.
Right, so I know your fight is just over a week away. Obviously, the fight is a week Saturday. What's your prediction for the fight? How do you see the fight playing out?
I mean, I can sit here and tell you what I want and what's gonna happen, but probably won't go as planned. I'm just gonna go in there and do what I do and have some fun. I'm not sure what exactly what's gonna happen, but I'm gonna go in there and have some fun.
Brilliant. Well, I'm really looking forward to the fight, and I wish you obviously a lot of success in this fight. And obviously, you're in the early stages of your career, so a lot of success in your career as well. Before we let you go, just want to give you a chance to do any shout-outs. Want to shout out any friends, family, sponsors, and also let people know about your Facebook and Twitter?
Thank you. Definitely. I'd like to give a huge shout-out to all my friends and family and fans. My gym, Ant Dogs MMA, my coaches, Coach Ron, all my sponsors, and I'll be sure to make you guys proud, and I'll see you guys April 19th. You can follow me on Twitter at BriannaV115. You can also like my fan page and keep up with me on there at Brianna Van Buren. And that's pretty much it. I'll see you guys April 19th.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today, and we wish you all the success for that fight.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Bye.
Bye-bye.
We are now joined by Stephanie Eggink. Stephanie will be co-headlining at XFC 23 a week on Friday. Thank you for joining us today, Stephanie.
Hey.
How are you? Obviously, we're about 9 days out from the fight. How are you feeling so close to the big fight?
All my focus and attention is on my diet and cutting weight. I'm big. I'm a big 115er, so the weight cut is always a little bit of a struggle. I'm 5'8" in the 115-pound division, so I cut a substantial amount. So when the week out from a fight, my training really is mostly focused on losing those pounds. So that's what I'm doing. That's what my focus is on. And right now, instead of thinking 9 days till my fight, I'm thinking like 9 days till I can eat. So.
How much weight do you have to get then to get down to 115?
Well, I walk around, when I'm not dieting at all. I walk around at about 138 to 140, and then like 6-8 weeks out, I start cleaning up my diet, and I diet down to 125, and then I cut 10 pounds of water the day before weigh-ins, or the day of weigh-ins, the night before weigh-ins. So it's a pretty big leap. Yeah.
That is quite
about 25 pounds, actually.
Yeah, it's a hell of a cut. So are you gonna? Yeah. Is 115 where you're looking to stay, or is that cut going to be too much? Do you think, or what are your plans for the future?
I don't know. I always think at this point, I always think, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this again. This sucks. I'm gonna go back to 125. And then after my fight, like last time after my fight, I was like, oh, it was fine. I could do it again. It always sucks right now. But I don't know. Honestly, I'd still be big at 125 at being 5'8". So, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do. I'm really dominant at 115. I'm way bigger and stronger, and even with the weight cut, I feel really strong still at 115. It just sucks. It really sucks. So we'll see. I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure what I want to do.
I can imagine it being very, very difficult. So you talked there about your how you're feeling at 115 on fight night. Obviously, you talked there about your strength. What effect does that have on your stamina?
It doesn't. I really thought it would have an effect, but I felt I could have gone 5 rounds in my last fight. In the third round of my last fight, I still have all kinds of energy. I credit most of that to my strength and conditioning programming that I do. My recovery time was awesome, and I didn't feel weak at all, which was really surprising, considering how much water I lost. But no, I didn't feel the effects. Had I wouldn't have fought at 115 again. But I didn't feel anything more than at 125.
So you talk about obviously your last fight. Was that your last fight? Was that your first fight at 115?
My first MMA fight. I had a couple boxing matches at 115 when I was substantially younger, when I was 17 and 18. So I had been at 115 before, but again, that was it was 7 years ago. So pretty much, yeah, I'd say my first time at 115.
Obviously, as well, obviously the last fight was your XFC debut. Do you think because you're fighting for a bigger promotion, you're going to be facing tougher competition, so you obviously want to get the maximum benefit, and obviously fighting at 115, like you've already said, you've got quite a strength advantage. Do you think that's going to play a big part now that you're up to a higher level of opponent?
Yeah. The only reason that I went to 115 is because I got offered that fight with Heather Clark, and I had no intentions of going to 115 at all. But once I was there and Heather's a good fighter, worthy opponent, and I felt way stronger and faster than her, and so it kind of made me think, I wonder how good I could do in this division at 115. You know, how quickly I could climb the rankings. So in that sense, it interests me. But I think I'd be able to climb the rankings higher at 115, or faster at 115 than 125. But at the same time, I don't know if the trade-off is worth it with the weight cut. But you're asking me a week out for my fight when I'm miserable, so we'll see.
Yeah, I can fully understand where you're coming from. Now, another thing worth noting about your fight is, of course, originally you were slated to fight Angela Mangana, and then Brianna stepped in, I believe, about 3 or 4 weeks ago. What impact does it have on you when your opponent changes so late in the game?
It was mostly disappointing because that was supposed to be a title fight, and this is no longer a title fight. But I was disappointed for a few days, but I got over it. I was ready for a 5-round fight, so my cardio is going to be excellent in this 3-rounder. But one thing about Brianna is that she's new to the game, so there's not a lot of video out there, whereas Angela has tons of videos. So the only, I've seen a couple of videos of Brianna, but, mostly what I know is that she's short. She's a lot shorter than me, but, that just means she can make that up for any mass, be thicker, So, my game changed a little bit based on that, just based on, her body composition and everything, but in terms of, like, my mental focus and stuff, I'm still ready, still game to go. So I'm not taking her lightly. I don't take anybody lightly. I don't care how green they are or what their record is. So.
No, I think you're right to do that. You never know what somebody can bring to the table, and obviously training and then being in a fight is two completely different things. So, I mean, obviously you talk about the disappointment of the title fight, and of course that would probably be the biggest disappointment, more so than the change of opponent. Obviously, if you win this fight, will your next fight be for a title?
I believe so. That's kind of what I talked in the promoter John Priscilla had discussed. The title's just put on hold. It's not canceled. So I will be fighting for the title at some point. My guess is not the next card, but the one after that. So maybe late summer, early fall would be my guess. And I'm assuming it will be against Angela, but I don't know. But I will still be fighting for the title at some point. I was told that by the promoter, so.
That's good. At least you got that as a good motivation for you. Now, you talked a little bit there about your background in boxing. I wanted to ask you, what made you want to do the transition from boxing to mixed martial arts?
My initial plan was to do both. But why I initially started getting into MMA was I got bored of the boxing training. I started boxing when I was 16, started doing MMA when I was 21. So by the time I had started doing MMA, I had been doing boxing for 5 years, and I was I was bored. It's not as diverse, obviously, as MMA. MMA, I can train something new every day, where boxing is, I went in, worked with my coach on some focus mitts, hit the bag, sparred, that's it. There's not as much going on. But like I said, I wanted to do both. And I was doing both when I lived in Washington and then when I lived in Tampa. But right now I'm in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and there's not a lot of boxing here. So my boxing just kind of been put on hold. But that's definitely something that I want to continue because that's my first love. So the next place that I end up, I want to continue boxing. But like I said, really why I switched was I just got bored. I wanted something more in training. I walked into an MMA gym and it excited me, and I hadn't been excited about training in a while. So,
how did you find the transition? Because obviously, with doing the boxing, you're focusing on your striking, focusing on your hands, and then go to MMA, especially with the grappling aspect. How did you find the transition?
I picked up jiu-jitsu really quickly. That was I love jiu-jitsu. That was easy for me. The most challenge that I've had is the wrestling aspect. I like to stand up tall and fight, and then clinching in boxing you don't do. So my clinch game was horrible, and I didn't really have any wrestling at all. So that was the biggest transition for me. I feel comfortable on my back. And since I moved to Sioux Falls, I've been working with Shayna on my wrestling, so now my wrestling, I feel comfortable there too. But definitely the transition from the standing to the ground was the hardest part. That in between game, the clinch game and stuff, that was the most difficult for me. And also, brawling, I was used to really technical striking, coming from gyms where no one just comes at you, starts swinging wildly. So that was also something that kind of was hard to deal with at first, was, girls that weren't throwing straight punches, wild swinging. That's still something that I'm trying to get used to. It's hard to train for that. When you're used to straight jabs, straight rights, tight hooks, it's difficult to train for that crazy overhand right that comes from your hip. But, yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine in your boxing training, that's something you just wouldn't dream of doing, because there's not necessarily the technique behind it. Of course, if you get caught by one of them, there's certainly a lot of power behind it. So you talked there a little bit about your training. Who are some of the people that you're training with that have helped you prepare for this fight?
Well, I credit all my jiu-jitsu to Gracie Tampa, where I trained for 2 years down in Florida. And my boxing all comes from where I'm from, Seattle, Washington. That's where I started. But right now I'm living and training in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and I train with Shayna Baszler. She's a catch wrestler extraordinaire, and that's all. That's what me and her work on a lot. So I love catch wrestling now. I want to get really good at it. It's fun. So she's definitely helped me out a lot. My game's improved drastically since I've moved here. I've become a lot more confident in aspects that I felt uncomfortable in before. So, yeah.
And also, with regards to your up and coming fight week on Friday, one of the big things as well, of course, is you're co-headlining XFC, and obviously, of course, that means it's going to be on national television. What does that kind of exposure mean for you so early on in your MMA career, and does it add any extra pressure for you?
Not really. I think it's cool because I have family all over the country that can watch me. All it really means is, opportunity for more sponsors, because sponsors that, when you fight on TV, there's a lot more people that are willing to sponsor you. But when I'm in there, it doesn't matter if there was, only 2 people watching. It's the exact same as if there's thousands, once the fight starts. I try not to let that kind of thing get at me mentally. I think it's just a great opportunity. Like I said, I have a lot of family in Alaska and Washington State, and they all watch me fight on TV, and that would never happen. So that's really cool. But I try not to let the mental aspect get to me. Just stay focused. It's just another fight. She's just another opponent. So.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the right approach to take, and it must be nice knowing that people that you might not get to see all the time can actually see what you're doing and see how well you're progressing. Now, the other thing I want to ask you about before I let you do any shout outs and before I let you go, obviously at the minute there's a massive boom at the minute within women's mixed martial arts. Of course, XFC are doing a lot for women's MMA. We're seeing what Invicta are doing, and they're putting on some solid events. Of course, we're seeing women in the Ultimate Fighting Championship now. We've got Bellator. What's it like to be part of that, knowing there's such a boom at the moment within women's mixed martial arts?
Well, it's awesome, especially being getting signed to a promotion like the XFC. The XFC is one of the top ones, especially for females right now. At the same time, you have Invicta, and you have all of these girls showing how awesome they are, and it's perfect time for me to just be really beginning MMA career. It's exciting. I have no idea where it's going to go. You have Ultimate Fighter coming out now for the 135s, and who knows what weight class is next that they're going to sign on the UFC. So, there's a lot of opportunities that are opening up, and I'm still young enough that, I have plenty of time to see where it goes. But I think it's great, and I think it's great that you have promoters like John Prisco, who's building promotions are building divisions within his promotion for women. It's not just a random girl fight to bring in the crowd. You know, he's building divisions in the 115, and you see that in other promotions too, but not very many. You know, more so now, but, you know, you have Invicta and Bellator and XFC and the UFC, and that's really it for who are building these women's divisions. So it means a lot more, you know, to be fighting for a promotion like that. So I'm so excited to see, you know, where it leads, what happens. The future is endless.
Absolutely. It is. At the moment, there just seems to be so much emphasis and so much being put on women's mixed martial arts, and the you know, with where it can go, the potential is absolutely endless. I just want to say, Stephanie, it's been a real pleasure having you onto today's show. I really appreciate you coming on. But before we let you go, I want to give you a chance to do any shout outs. Want to shout out any friends, family, sponsors, and let people know about your Facebook and Twitter as well?
Yeah. First, thank you to TJ for getting me on your show. TJ is a savior when it comes to like my final week, because I don't remember anything. I wouldn't even remember I had an interview today. He had messaged me, but John Prisco with the XFC, wanted to thank him for putting this fight on, even though, you know, the fight, the original fight got canceled. He found me a replacement, which is awesome. My team at Gracie Tampa, my team up here at Next Edge, I want to thank Sam Wilson and Anthony Hopkins, American Knockout Fightwear, Tussle, and of course I want to thank Shayna for putting up with me during my weight cut. That's about it.
Well, that's
sure
brilliant.
I forgot plenty of things. But.
We really appreciate you coming on, and we wish you all the luck for the fight a week Friday as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Bye.
See you later.
Okay, we are now joined by Rosi Sexton. Rosi will be the first British woman to fight in the UFC, and she'll be facing Alexis Davis at UFC 161 in Winnipeg, Canada. First of all, Rosi, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. It's great to speak to you again.
My pleasure. Right, let's just jump straight in. How are you feeling?
I'm a whole mix of things, really. I'm excited. I mean, it's fantastic. It's my head's still spinning, really. It's only just started to sink in now. I mean, we've been sort of starting on the training camp already, so yeah, getting down to work, really. But yeah, it still feels a little bit unreal. You know, I think I'll believe it's happening when I'm there.
Yeah, I mean, let's be fair. I mean, this is huge. When you first started out in MMA, did you ever imagine or picture this moment?
Only in my wildest dreams. Yeah, I had no expectation that it would ever actually happen. I thought having a women's division in the UFC, I thought it would happen, but I never thought it would happen in time for me. So I think the fact that this opportunity's come up now, I mean, it's amazing. You know, it's the opportunity of a lifetime. You can't say no to that.
No, it's absolutely fantastic, and it just shows you if you're willing to put the hard work in, then obviously things are going to come your way. I mean, you're one of the, you know, you've got a reputation for being one of the hardest workers on the UK scene, and finally you're getting the recognition that you deserve from the big show. Let's go through. Let's talk about how this all came about. So, explain to me how you were contacted, who was contacted, you know, what you were doing at the time, and literally, you know, this wave that's hit you. How did you kind of take the news?
Well, it's all gone through my manager, is Graham Boylan, Intensity Fighter Management, and I mean, he's dealt with the whole thing. He's absolutely fantastic. You know, if it wasn't for his hard work, it would never have happened. So I think all the credit so far has to go to him. I mean, basically, it all started a few months back after the Ronda Rousey Liz Carmouche fight, and I sort of sat down with my coach, and he kind of said to me, "Well, what are you doing at the moment?" I said, "Well, I'm just earning some money. I'm enjoying some grappling. You know, where are you going with this?" And he said, "Well, if you're offered a UFC fight, would you take it?" It's a funny question. Yeah, of course I would, but I don't really see that happening, you know. And he goes, "Okay, well, leave it with me." And he went off and talked to my manager about it, and then he contacted the UFC, and there was lots of stuff going on behind the scenes. And next thing is, a couple of months later, it was last Wednesday, in fact, at 5-1, phone rang and Graham's name came up, and I just had a funny feeling when I answered the phone. It's like, okay, this could be something big. And he said, "Have you got a few minutes to talk?" And I said, "Well, I've got a couple of minutes. Why? What's up?" And he said, "I've got a UFC fight for you if you want it. Call me back when you're free." and that was it really. So yeah, it's been a mad sort of week.
How taken aback were you by the news? I mean, this isn't the kind of thing that happens on an everyday basis. I mean, this, if you're in mixed martial arts, and no disrespect to any of the promotions, there's lots of fantastic promotions out there in the UK, in Europe, in America, but the UFC is the pinnacle. So what were your emotions when you heard the news that you'd been offered a fight in the UFC?
I had to sit down, put it that way. It was. It's hard to describe, really. I suppose there was that feeling of incredible excitement, and to have the opportunity and the, oh my God, it's really coming, it's really happening. And I suppose also that sort of, what have I just got myself into? A bit of everything really. It's
I mean, to get the call up to the UFC is one thing, but not only have you had the call up, but you're straight on to a pay-per-view card, you're straight on to the main card, and if you look at the rest of the card, especially say for example the top 3 fights on that card, I mean, you talk about names. I mean, there's some of the biggest names in the sport. What's it like knowing you're going to be on the same card as those names?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest, when I first heard the news, I didn't realise how big a deal it was going to be. I think, it's going to be on the prelims or something like that. And then when I found out it's on the main card, it's a big event, and it just kept building, it's just sort of realising that, okay, this is for real. And yeah, that took a while to sink in, really. So it's been a really surreal sort of week. I mean, I got the call on Wednesday, and then like 12 hours later, I'm elbow deep in paperwork, for a while I was waking up in the morning and not quite believing that it wasn't a dream. But yeah, it's starting to sink in now.
It's fantastic. Just for people listening, just so they can listen, they know the names we're talking about. I mean, the main event is Henan Barao versus Eddie Wyland for the interim bantamweight champion, and then you've got the co-main, which is Shogun Rua versus Antonio Ruggiero, Little Nog, and then the other light heavyweight bout is Rashad Evans versus Dan Henderson. So I mean, these are the biggest names in the sport. I mean, Shogun and obviously Little Nog are legends right from the Pride Fighting Championship days. You've got Henan Barao champion, Rashad Evans and Dan Henderson, former champions of UFC or Pride respectively. So I mean, you don't get much bigger than that. When they approached you about the fight, did you find out an opponent straight away, or was there a bit of build up before you found out the opponent?
Yes, no, I got the opponent straight off. So.
What do you know about your opponent?
She's a very good grappler. She's been around in that weight division for some time now. She's put together a few really good performances in her last couple of fights. So it's going to be a tough fight. This is going to be a real test. I think it's an interesting style matchup. I mean, I think we're both grapplers. We're slightly different sort of grapplers. We've got a slightly different style. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
And with regards to your current to this fight, is it with regards to UFC? Does it work on like a one fight basis? So, or have you got a few fights? Have you signed a contract for a few fights? Or how does your deal work with the UFC?
It's a 4-fight contract, but basically it's only the first one that's guaranteed, as far as I'm concerned. You've got to go out there and put on a good showing. I think that's the bottom line.
Of course, yeah, and I think that's the same for every division, and we've seen that with some of the biggest names as well, haven't we? Okay, so you talked a little bit about, you said you've started your training camp. So who are you training with? Who are some of the people, and what camp are you with?
I'm training at Next Generation in Liverpool. Paul Rimmer's my main coach. I also do some work with Peter Irving, who's based down in London. And my strength and conditioning, I do it Strength and Performance in Stockport. They take care of all of that. So I've got a really good training camp. You know, I've got a bunch of very solid training partners up in Liverpool, and I've also got some other fantastic female grapplers, MMA fighters who I train with on a fairly regular basis. So I'll be setting up some sparring with them, and making sure I get lots of really good sparring partners together.
Okay, moving away from this for a moment and looking at the bigger picture of women's MMA. Obviously, you've been fighting for a long, long time, and we're finally getting to see women in MMA given the respect they deserve, given the platform they deserve. Obviously, with UFC, of course, the biggest platform in the world. I think Victor FC has done a lot for women's MMA. How exciting is it to have seen this within, like you said, you knew this was going to happen, but you didn't think it was going to happen within your career. How exciting is it for you to see this happening while you're still an active fighter?
I mean, it's incredible. It's immensely exciting. And it happened a lot faster than I thought it was going to. I think the momentum from Ronda Rousey's fight and the fact that went down really well, I think it's just something. The time has come for women in the UFC, and it's great to be a part of that. To be able to be involved right from the word go.
Yeah, absolutely, and this is also going to be one of the earlier women fights. I know we've got Misha Tate and Kat Zingano after next this weekend. I'm not sure. Is this going to be the third female fight, or is there more?
I think the next one is Sarah McMahon and Sheila Gaff.
Yes, then. So I mean, you are right in at the beginning, aren't you? Which is absolutely fantastic. Well, obviously, I mean, like I said, I interviewed you before. We spoke quite a while ago, and I was over the moon when I saw the news. Having interacted with you before, I was obviously really, really pleased that you've been given the call up, because I know how hard you work. I follow you on Twitter, so I know how hard you work. So, but I just want to say, a massive congratulations. I'm looking forward to seeing you get your first UFC victory.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay, before we let you go, I just want to give you a chance to do some shout-outs. Want to shout out any friends, family, sponsors? I know we're a few weeks out, or a few months out from the fight, but any shout-outs you want to do?
Yeah, Mike Lane from Unorthodox Nutrition, who's dealing with my nutrition for this, which is actually quite a big deal because I'm going up a weight class, so he's got quite a lot of work to do, and he really knows his stuff, so thanks to him. Sponsors, PhD Nutrition, they've looked after me for probably the last 7 years now, I think, and they've taken care of me all the way through, so it's been absolutely fantastic, and I'm using a lot of their stuff at the moment. Scramble Fightwear, they're pretty good to me as well, and I'm sure there's some people I've forgotten. I have a whole load of people who have given me lots of support, friends, family, people who help me out with training, and I really couldn't do it without a great team behind me, so I'm very grateful for everyone who's helped out.
Well, I just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure having you back on the show, and like I said, I'm really looking forward to seeing you make your debut, so thank you for joining us today.
That's great. Thanks, Ray.
Okay, that was this week's show. I hope you enjoyed those interviews. I hope you agree there were some great interviews there. And I'll see what I can do and get on for next week, and we look forward to growing and being part of the MMA Victor Radio Network.